10. So, that's where the prick's been all summer. Michelle folded her arms as they sat, all 5 of them, on the bench on the city walls overlooking fountains. The sun well on its way to rising, the mist from the river beginning to evaporate. Down there, risking his skin amongst those bastard prods. No offense, like, Michelle added, nodding to Abby. Next to her, Erin's head was in her hands. She said this was because the stress of it all. Sometimes, Abby said. Sometimes he wouldn't show. Wouldn't show? The dick face. If he's not dead, I'll kill him. I think he was with you, Erin, going to the dance, when he was to meet me for the Doctor Who event. Abby smiled across to her. He told me he was helping a friend in need. That was very sweet of him. Your fella took another girl to a dance and you call it very sweet? Shot back Michelle. You can't be like that with boys, Abby, they'll just use you. She got up, facing the girls, the sun reflecting off her silver puffer jacket. No wonder he didn't go through with leaving with ye. You've got to be like, ye can get lost, if ye do this ... ye can get lost if ye do that. But, replied Abby, after a few minutes of silence, handing Orla her bag that the girl was so eagerly eyeing up, it's in your interests he chose to stay, isn't it? You didn't want him to leave? No. Shouted Erin. Course not. Added Claire. God, no. Michelle folded her arms. Can I play your Walkman? Orla was holding the device and a Mannix tape. Abby nodded. I still don't get why you think I'm Catholic, said Abby, after a time. Michelle stopped, and turned to Abby, speaking to her as if she were a particularly slow child. Your granda was Irish? Abby nodded. Catholic? Abby nodded. But Nan was Church of England. And my dad's side were Methodist. And, would you describe your relationship with the Gillen household to be close? No, replied Abby, definitely. I certainly would not. Well, there you are, then, Michelle said, conclusively, and Claire, Erin and Orla, who had Abby's Walkman on, all nodded in agreement. And your hair? What's wrong with it? Abby asked, still not having followed the last part of the conversation. We have a West Banker on our hands here, my girls. Now that you come to mention it, Orla nodded. And didn't she say her man was nursing her uncle? She did indeed, Claire said. Well, it's no wonder. Michelle looked at Abby. No wonder you're... No, Erin interrupted. She's got to answer the questions first, before we can really say for absolute certain. What began Abby, but the 3 girls sitting next to Abby were now up and standing next to Michelle. Orla was bopping quietly to what sounded quietly like motorcycle emptiness. Abby, began Michelle. Answer truthfully to the following questions. Number 1, if you're ever in trouble, upset, down, distracted, stressed, what beverage does your man give you? Abby thought. Tea. Aha. Right, now we are getting somewhere. 2, you've defied her. What happens? Slapped with whatever's to hand. Hairbrush, usually. That's it, declared Claire, conclusive. Wait up, girls, Michelle continued. Your friends come round to see you. Your mammy gives them their tea. Of course. Abby replied. But it's the hottest day of the year, Erin took over. You go out without a jacket. No. Mom would go mental. Okay, does your man fall out with people, specifically over refusing food, drink, hospitality, kitchen and dining equipment? Yes, agreed Abby. Overnight, sometimes. Even in the space of a lunchtime. The girls all nodded, knowingly. Right girls, here's the biggie. Michelle quietened the others. You're on a bus. You get off the bus ... finish the sentence. Thank the driver, Abby finished. Course. And if I didn't, Mom would find out. People talk in our town, nothing gets past my mum. And there we have it, girls, Michelle finished. She's one of us. One of us, Clara repeated. Erin looked away, as if hoping for a less conclusive result. A Catholic, Orla said, removing the headphones, in a tone of voice that suggested that this was obvious. Not that it made a difference, Abby noticed. The headphones hadn't even been plugged into the Walkman. 88,888,888. James was not on their bench when Abby had gone to the phone box that night. She left the phone call with her mother, wearily telling her that her uncle was being kept comfortable on morphine and they were just waiting. Abby sat there in any case, thinking about her beloved Uncle David, her real uncle, not her mother's cousins, who had spent his life in the Navy, 24 years leaving as an officer, who had shared his home in Portsmouth with them in summer holidays, who had been jolly and kind and funny. And there was now nothing she could ever do to help him, nothing she could do to even see him. Abby couldn't even remember the last time she had seen him. She stayed out past 9, and even past 10, just sitting on the bench, finally letting herself in the unlocked back door a little after 11. Next day, the incident was not discussed. It never was. Her aunt asked her whether she had spoken to her mother, and Abby said she had. "I'll phone again tonight," Abby said, and, almost to make the point relating to Dean's comments the day before, added, "Mum prefers me to call in the evening." When Abby had finished calling that evening, speaking first to her sister, oblivious to what was going on with their uncle and telling Abby about her friends and clothes, books and toys she had been bought, then her father, holding together a job, care of a child and his wife's care role, discussing his woes with Abby like an adult rather than his 16-year-old daughter, she made her way to the bench. It took her a few minutes to realize James was waiting for her. He waited for her to sit down, then shuffled up closer to her. Abby turned to him and smiled. His face was troubled. "Thank you for walking me back yesterday." But, he looked her face, a faint, blue tinge by her ear and jaw, revealed by the rays of the setting sun. "I don't want to talk about it," Abby said, shaking her head. "That's how they are." "But your parents?" "My uncle is the same as ever. That is, he's still dying. I hated being sent here, but I'm kind of glad about it now. I keep wondering if that make me a bad person." James smiled and held out his hand. Abby smiled too, though it was an effort to smile that evening, and took it. "No. How could it? You did what your parents asked." "I had a good day yesterday," Abby said, holding up the arm, the hand of which James was holding. "I liked it." "Me too," said James, nodding to his. "I liked spending the day with you. I'm beginning to realize I was a bit crazy walking through your estate." Abby smiled again. "But I'd do it again," he added, gallantly. "It's just Dean, he's crazy." And they seem to encourage it. James got to his feet. "Do you want to go for a walk?" Abby nodded, and got up too, whereupon he swept her suddenly into his arms, kissing her deeply. 88,888,888. "You got home late yesterday, girl," her uncle said, as Abby put her jacket on. She clenched her fist tightly. Too late to sneak put now without being questioned over her timekeeping. "I'm off to call my parents," Abby called through the hall. "You're not," called back her aunt, as Abby pushed her feet inside her black Doc Martens. "I'm going," Abby shouted back through the walls, silently. What would James think if she missed him tonight? She had some news for him in answer to his own question of the night before. Not showing up would suggest to him she was running away from his idea. "If you're going to meet yet fella, then go and tell him you're busy tonight, and you meet him another night." Her uncle had pulled himself to the living room door, Dean loitering behind his father. "Right? Doing what, exactly?" asked in a different tone. Abby's question might have sounded polite. "You." Uncle Warren pulled Dean in front of Abby. "Tell her. Then, show her." "Everything, Dad?" Dean's face was fixed on Abby, and a smile played at his lips. "Yes, everything," snarled back Warren Gillen. "She needs to know what being a Protestant means here. What this is for." Her uncle shot his eyes to Abby. "That it's not just murals in a different church. But, I've arranged with James. If that boy likes ye as much as he seemed to the other night, then he won't mind waiting for you until tomorrow." "Dean?" Dean grunted in agreement, folding his arms and staring sourly at Abby. "Dean will wait with for you while you tell him." As they left the house and turned right into the walls, Abby asked him where they were going. Dean stared at her, and snorted, but gave her no reply except for a shove once or twice in the back. James was waiting on their bench in Fahan Street. As he saw her, James got to his feet, and took her hands when she got close to him, then leaned in to kiss her. Abby glanced over her shoulder. Dean was lingering at the corner, waiting for her, a spectre of menace. What was it that he and her uncle wanted to show her? "I've got yo do something tonight, with my family," Abby began, emphasizing her words. She jerked her head a little in Fiend's direction. James looked past her and saw Dean, his face falling. Abby felt her heart sink too. She had looked forward to seeing him all day, like every day. Then a dazzle of happiness cut through her gloom. "But," Abby pulled him close, standing on tiptoes, and put her head close to his ear, "you asked me about Saturday night." "Saturday night," he repeated, taking a step back and looking at her, his eyes bright with excitement and fear. Saturday night, and everyone at the Mallon house would be out. James had told her, the night before he had the house to himself. 2 nights' time. "You asked about me staying over," she continued, a little abashed. "I've found a way of staying with you," Abby added, in case James didn't know what she meant. She watched his face break into a smile. But it was as if he was aware that Dean was watching them, that, instead of pulling Abby close and kissing her knee meltingly, he bent down to her bruised cheek and kissed it, lightly. "Meet you here, on Saturday then?" he whispered, near her ear. Abby nodded, then broke her hands from his. "Got to go, bye," she said, hurriedly, the chilly, evening wind catching the open panels of her denim shirt. She had to go, Abby knew, or she would just want to stay. "Bye," James called, watching her walk towards her cousin, who pushed Abby in the opposite direction of Wells, glaring past her as she scuffed along, at James Maguire. 88,888,888. Before Abby had even got to the Cathedral Youth Club's doors, Dean shadowing her, Stella Donaldson had pulled her over to her. She had been walking down Kennedy Street and into Fountains with a group of girls and had broken apart from them to tear up to Abby. "Abs!" she cried, dragging her towards the group. "So glad you could come." Abby looked round at the girls, one fair, with blonde eyes and enormous blue eyes, dressed in denim and a rock t-shirt. That was Corinne. Next to her, Vicky, dark-skinned, dark-haired, smiled at her over her large glasses. Jackie Harris, a girl with a bubble perm and heels with her jeans and red halter neck crop top, interjected, then whispered, "I noticed, on Saturday, that gorgeous boy you seeing." "SHH," hissed Stella, nudging Jackie, then, louder, said, "Yes, of course, come with us." They walked as one to the youth club's main doors, Dean, with 2 other boys flanking him, glowering down at them. "All right, Dean?" Jackie said, mock flirtatiously, walking with an exaggerated swagger through the doors. Abby tried not to laugh, but the other 2 girls did. "Come on," Stella beckoned to a large table with old chairs around it, many with their upholstery really in need of a staple gun. "Drink?" she asked Abby, nodding towards the hatch to a kitchen which was being manned by a very bored-looking dad. Around him were family bags of crisps, packets of biscuits, sweets and cans of fizzy drink. "I'll get the first, after that you're on your own, ladies." Abby watched as Stella crossed the scuffed, dented parquet floor. The room was filling up. Some were people Abby recognized from school. A group of girls from her class smiled as they found their own table at the other side of the hall. In the center, 2 boys were folding down a table tennis table, 2 others and a girl racking up pool balls on the green baize of a pool table. Abby watched Dean as he strode over to the girl, his scarred face from the evening of 12th July highlighted by the fluorescent lights overhead. She turned suddenly to him, pausing in the act of slotting in the black's ball. It was Denise. Vicky and Corinne had noticed her too. Jackie got to her feet and skipped over to Stella, whispering something then nodding in Denise's direction. She then grabbed a couple of cans that Stella had bought and carted them over with Stella. "Here we are, girls." Stella put the drinks down, 5 Cokes. "And a little bit of this." Out of her bag, Jackie pulled a bottle of vodka. She held it under the table staring at the dad behind the counter as she undid the top, its metallic breaking not at all noticed by the only adult in the room, who was busy selling 2 younger boys some bags of crisps. "Well, drink up," Ladies, she encouraged, let me splash in a bit of this and get this party started. Their argument was fierce but indistinct, and Abby watched them as Dean waved his arms towards his sister. In turn, Denise, hands on hips, fought back. It's about her leaving, Stella said, close to her arm. Abby turned her head sharply. Leaving? It was the first she had heard of it. Yet, when did the Gillans discuss anything with her? We could ask her to join us, said Abby. Jackie leaned past her and held out a can. Hey, Coke if you want it, Denise? She called. Denise paused in her shot, looking between them. Her eyes rested on Abby, then she shook her head. Abby looked away, nursing her head in her hand for a second, and then turned back to look Stella, picking up the Coke. Thanks, she said, taking a good, long, boozy swig. Don't take it personally, Vicky consoled, her curly head bobbing as she spoke. Her parents want her in Oxford or Cambridge. She's so above everyone, even at her school. But leave here? That's the way of it, sighed Corinne, shaking her head, sadly. Anyone with ambition always leaves Londonderry. Or anyone who doesn't have a death wish, added Vicky. Didn't you know? Stella looked surprised. But she broke off as Dean came over to them, looming by Abby. What are you girls talking about? Dean asked, glancing first at Jackie, then at Stella. I was just saying, Abby said, when no one spoke, how they have come over the bridge at night to the youth club here. Course they have, idiot. Dean looked at Abby, scornfully. Londonderry's their city. They're hard in Waterside. He looked back at Stella, and grinned. No Provo scum is going to scare them. Now, are you going to stand with Denise or aren't you? Abby was at a loss. Why was she required to stand by her cousin who had made it perfectly clear Abby was to never have anything to do with her? Sue glanced back at the girls, who were also expecting her to get up and be with Denise too. Look, I am sure she doesn't want Yertha either. But she needs someone, playing pool with those two lads there. They look all right together on their own, Abby observed, remaining seated. She picked up the vodka-adulterated Diet Coke and took a swig. Our ma'am said she was to be kept company, Dean pressed, leaning over her. Then, why can't you? Because, growled Dean, in a very good impression of his father, I'm busy. Besides, Denise has her interview tomorrow, and we aren't to disturb her. Half an hour later, and Denise had finished her game of pool, glowering at Abby every few minutes, before allowing Harry Oliver to kiss her on the cheek. Abby was about to follow her, feeling sure Dean would not have approved of that, when Denise flew to her, and into her face growled, Dean will walk me home. He would be handsome, Stella commented, when Abby finally sat down with the girls, her Diet Coke having been replenished by, presumably, Stella, except for... What? But Stella broke off. The Gilkin siblings seemed to have recommenced their argument by the door. Eventually, she stormed out, Dean hot on her heels. Here's to peace. Jackie laughed, toasting the door through which Denise had left, holding her can of Coke high in the air. The girls, including Abby, tapped drinks, laughing. Then, Jackie nudged Abby and pointed. Dean had stalked back in, and was heading towards the stereo system. Don't put any of that rave shit on, called someone from a group of boys Dean's age lingering by the chairs near the window. Dean turned and raised his middle finger. Tainted Love came dim-dumming through the speakers. Oh, that will do, Jackie said, approvingly, though I prefer 70s myself. Here, look at this, Vicky declared, pointing to the outfit in Ms. she had just turned to. It's in Topshop. Abby looked at the Velvet mini dress. It did look funky. If she had been slim enough, it would go well with opaque black tights and her boots. You'd look good in that, Vix, commented Matthew Hamilton, passing their table pointed to an office outfit. Piss off, Hamilton, scorned Jackie, pulling the magazine to her. She examined the velvet dress again. Matthew looked at Abby, and winked. It's the same one they had in Just 17 this week, Corinne pointed out. They hadn't got any in town. Bet they will in Belfast, Stella said. She turned to Abby. We're off to Belfast on Saturday, for a shopping day. Want to come? Abby smiled, sipping her Coke. I'd love to. Except, These were trendies. Abby was very much not. They have an indie shop on the Castle Road, Vicky Tranter said, kindly. When we've done Topshop, Tammy Girl, and River Island, we can go there. Yes, nodded Abby. I'd love to. Then go, now, Stella insisted, nodding towards the stereo, where Dean was now trying to put on a record at the top of the stack system. What? Abby was lost. Go where? Ask your cousin. Ask Dean? Asked Abby, incredulously. Why? Well, he's your cousin. He can square it with your auntie. Come on, Srella said, pulling Abby up. I'll come with you. Love your boots, called one of the girls from the other table, looking down at Abby's feet. But Stella had whisked her away as Dean pulled out a packet of cigarettes, pulling it out of his mouth as the man behind the kiosk shot him a look, got up and placed his fists on his hips. Dean threw it back into the box and stuffed them back into his pocket. Dean, began Abby. Yeah? In Saturday, Stella and the girls have. Den gave her a withering look, which melted as soon as he saw Stella looking at him. She can go, he said, stepping towards Stella, if you'll give me something, Stella Donaldson, Dean drawled, disgustingly. Abby said nothing. Stella, on the other hand, seemed to enjoy mock flirting with Dean and told him yes, at the end of the night. What, at the end of the night? Asked a voice behind Stella. Dean's face crumpled as Richard Donaldson stood next to his sister. Abby watched. But Stella did not even pretend to deny anything. A snog, at the end of tonight, Stella declared, and maybe a feel. Yeah, Richard said, looking at the now silent Dean, clearly in disbelief. Stella walked back over to the table, turning to blow a kiss to Dean and wink at him. He turned away, now too realizing he was being head-on. This Dean Gillen's cousin, Abby Smith, Stella introduced, as they sat back down with Corinne, Jackie and Vicky. My brother. She nodded up to him. Richard. He held out a hand. Abby shook it. Richard is at the boys' grammar school, Stella continued, and he is going to hang out with his own friends, now, she added, pointedly. Abby Smith? Richard Donaldson repeated. Abby nodded. Richard has an interview at the 6th form tomorrow where Denise is applying. Competition is fierce. There's only so many places. I'll get in, say Richard, lazily, and if not maybe the Catholic school will take me. You know, they have an English boy going there already now. Really? Said Stella, rolling her eyes. She told me. He's her cousin, apparently. Oh yeah, her. Stella mocked. And what do you see in her? She apostrophes ... gorgeous, for one. Stella's Coke can, sniffed it and took a drink. Then shook his head grinning before slinking away over to his friends, clapping him on the back as he got to. Who? Asked Abby. The girls nudged one another. A girl. Yeah? A ... Catholic girl, hissed Jackie, then raised her eyebrows. Michelle Mallon. Blurted out Vicky, bubble perm quaking in her excitement. Abby felt heart race in her chest. Who? Corinne asked, taking up the vodka bottle a little too indiscreetly. Vicky hushed at her and pushed it under the table, stabbing her finger towards the Diet Coke can, trying to tell her to bring it down under the table. She lives on Cregan Estate, Vicky explained. Her mum works with my mum at the hospital. Has her cousin living with her. He's English ... but his family are Catholic. His mum went to England to have an abortion but liked London and changed her mind. Abby felt her mouth opening. Stella noticed, and she stared at her. James? Whispered to Abby when the three other girls had gone off to the toilet and they were alone. Your boyfriend? Abby nodded. Unexpectedly, Stella pulled her in for a hug. Same as me. Then she whispered, Catholic boys are sexy. I won't tell a soul, she promised, as Abby was about to beg her to keep the secret, then kissed her cheek. Come on. Dean's voice cut through Abby and Stelka's intimate conversation. You wanted to ask me something about Saturday? Abby frowned. Hadn't they just discussed it? She could smell a faint tinge of alcohol mingled with cigarettes on his breath. Abby sought patience as her cousin folded his arm and smirked lasciviously at Stella. The girls have asked me to go with them shopping to Belfast. I? They said, Now this stuck in her throat, to ask you. I will. Go on. He folded his arms, enjoying Abby's discomfort. Please may I go to the shops on Saturday in Belfast? Abby asked, through gritted teeth. Then are he wanting something in return? Dean rasped, and Abby thought he was going to continue to press Stella for the kiss. Instead, he pulled Abby up roughly by the arm. Get your things, he ordered. You're coming with me. So, as Corinne, Vicky and Jackie came giggling out of the bathroom, they stopped dead at the sight of Abby being strong-armed out of the youth club. Hey! Protested Abby, when she finally shook him free. But Dean pulped her round the back of the youth club and over to a row of garages. The one at the very end was open. Matthew Hamilton and Robbie Garvey were standing over a large grate, peering inside. Robbie laughed when he saw Dean had Abby with him. Now, said Dean. Ask me again. Please may I go with the girls to Belfast shopping on Saturday, she managed, just this side losing her temper. Well, as I couldn't have Stella, he commented. Hey, Matt. He flung Abby towards Matthew Hamilton. His wide, round face burst into a grin and he held Abby tightly by the shoulders, pushing her towards the breeze block wall and thrusting one clammy hand up her t-shirt and over her bra. Dean laughed as he loped over to Robbie. Abby pulled away, wiping her mouth and looking in disgust at the three boys. Up the street a rousing chorus of song filled the night. Abby looked out, then pulled her bag onto her shoulder, making to leave. Dean stood in her way. Oh no, he said. Well, you've made Matt's evening, so I suppose you can go shopping. So? Abby nodded towards the garage door. You're here to see this, Deep said, taking her by the arm. Behind them, Matt pulled down the garage door, the closure's wheels squeaking as it descended. What? She said again. Then her eye was attracted to something shiny, illuminated by the flickering strip light above them. This? A begloved Robbie pulled out something metallic from the crate and held it out to Abby. Are these what happened to you, Dean? Abby mustered as much dignity as she could in the face of overwhelming evidence of what Dean's friend was actually holding. She glanced at his face. Dean laughed, hollowly. What happened? He echoed, looking approvingly at the weapon in Robbie Garvey's hands. I'll tell you. He put his hands in his hips. We were after something, that's what. And I got one of my own fizzers and tried shoving it up his shirt, but before it could do anything, the whole thing blew back in my face. Bastards. Added Robbie, as if the fault lay with the person they had just admitted to attacking. Abby felt the outrage on her cheeks before anywhere else. Fuck the IRA, chipped in Matthew. Fuck the IRA? Repeated Abby, outraged. Why would you want to fuck them? Surely we don't want sex with the IRA. But before Abby's sarcastic tirade could get into its stride, Dean had raised his arm and gad-punched Abby to the rough, concrete floor. Then he pulled her up. Here, take this. Dean thrusted the assault rifle that Robbie had been holding towards Abby. She backed away towards the metal garage door. And this. He bore down on her, waving a gun in her face. It's a Webley. Great-granddad, our great-granddad, fought with this in the Second World War. He held it close to Abby's face, then brought it down to the trigger mechanism. Puts armor lights right out of action. Abby felt herself shaking. Her throat was dry, she just wanted to run away from all of this. Perhaps your little boyfriend would like to be in on all of this? If he's so into you, that is? Dean laughed when he saw her face. Not funny now, is it? Abby tried to push the rifle back towards Dean, but he slammed it hard towards her chest. Hold it, it's not loaded. They laughed, then dove towards the crate, other weapons appearing, rifles, but also wires and bits of rope. Look at her, boys. He called. Post a girl for us. They cheered, waving them around. Abby felt her face redden, and not just because Dean had hit her. Weapons in here, declared Dean, and men out there to hold them. He shouted, waving it in the air. Who couldn't be happier with that? Dean grabbed the armalite from Abby, holding that aloft and waving it, too. Then, all three of them began to chant, "We are the Derry Shank Hill freedom fighters. And we will never surrender."